So I guess we should just, quite frankly, be blunt about it. Compared to Germany, on average, US housing prices are just Hi guys, welcome back to our channel. If you're new here, my name's Ashton.
I'm Jonathan.
And along with our son Jack, we're the Black Forest family.
So welcome to part 2 in our series, where we're going to be taking a closer look into some differences between German and American houses.
If you missed it, part 1 in this series was a really fun exercise where we discussed the differences in construction, design, and form between American and German homes. So if you're just now joining us, make sure to check out that one too.
And in today's video, we are going to be talking about housing costs and purchasing trends. And again, this is something we are acutely aware of. In June of last year, we signed loan documents and a purchasing contract to move into our house this summer.
So in addition to being an absolute crash course in German legal phrases and banking contracts, it was actually a really good exercise for us to have a firsthand look into what the German real estate market is like. And of course, that includes things like fees, taxes, and regulations all surrounding the home buying process in Germany.
Yeah, and this was really new for me because this is the first house that I have ever purchased. So there was kind of a
major learning curve, really.
Yeah, I think so.
But, I also found this just wildly interesting. This wasn't my first home purchase. I actually owned a home in the United States before I moved to Germany. But as someone who's in the architecture field in both the US and Germany, it was a pretty surreal experience to be sitting on the other side of the conference table, not as the designer, but as the consumer.
Yeah, we've really learned a lot in these last 8 months, and we've been looking forward to making a video covering the costs associated with buying a house, but also covering the significant differences in purchasing behaviors between American and German consumers.
Yeah, that's a really big one. Okay, guys, so as you can imagine, the topic of housing in both countries is just huge. So it was important to us that we gave this the proper research, and that meant ultimately dividing this up into a series of videos. And we really hope that you stick around for all of them. So if you haven't done so already, please make sure to hit that subscribe button and hit the notification bell to be alerted when the next episode goes live each Sunday.
So let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. Los geht's, and let's get started in part 2, housing cost and purchasing trends, America versus Germany.
All right, so as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, I've actually owned a home before. I had my first house in the United States. And while I completely understand the incredible privilege that comes with being able to afford a home at such a young age, my experience wasn't actually necessarily all of that unique in the United States.
In fact, according to a survey done by Zillow, 17% of US homebuyers were between the age of 18 to 29.
And for me, buying a home was really something that was more of a sound financial investment. I lived in an area where home prices were just incredibly low. So for reference, my very first home cost $124,000 US. And I did have to put down 10% of the purchase price as a down payment on the loan. But I was pretty lucky and hopefully a little bit savvy, I guess. And I also negotiated that the sellers paid all of the closing costs. So to finance my purchase, I used what was called a first-time home buyer's loan from the FHA. With FHA backing, technically, borrowers can qualify for loans with as little as 3.5% down. However, when you put this low amount down, you're typically probably also going to be required to have something called private mortgage insurance, which is an additional fee added on to your monthly mortgage payment that essentially protects the lender's stake in the loan if you default. But the benefit of an FHA loan is that you're able to capitalize off of below market rate interest rates on your home mortgage. Now again, I can't stress enough that I'm very aware of how lucky I was and what an incredible financial position I was in to really even be able to pull that off. But I bring up my story not because it's some outlier, but because it's actually not all that out of the ordinary when you look at overall home purchasing trends in the United States.
So let's look at some national trends in home ownership. The United States isn't necessarily an outlier here. It's actually not at the front of the pack for home ownership.
Yeah, in fact, when we were doing the research for this video, we were pretty surprised to learn that according to this source at least, Romania has the highest home ownership rate in the world at 96%.
Really?
Yeah, that's pretty incredible.
Oh, I just learned this.
However, there is still a pretty significant difference in comparison with Germany, as you can see from this graphic. Overall, US homeownership rates peaked at about 68.8% in 2005 before it ultimately dropped to 62.7% by 2015. And while we can't necessarily speculate about what the future of home ownership is going to look like in the United States, when we were doing the research for this video, we actually thought it was quite interesting to read some of the forecasts on what the academics say about the future of homeownership will be for people in our age group. For example, the homeownership rate amongst millennials, which are people aged 25 to 34, is actually 8 percentage points lower than it was for both baby boomers and Gen Xers at the same age.
But despite these changes, we've noticed a pretty interesting cultural difference, and that is that Americans look at home buying as a property ladder and not as something that they will own for the rest of their lives.
In fact, it's why it's actually really common for Americans to congratulate each other on the purchase of your first starter home, which, in and of itself just implies that, of course, this is just your first home. You'll buy a bigger and better one down the road.
Yeah, starter home. Like we actually saw when we were researching for this video that according to the US Census Bureau, 2/3 of all home purchases are not first-time home buyers. That seems crazy.
And as you might know, if you've been watching our channel, I feel like in a way, this is really similar to something I talked about in our American grocery store versus German supermarket video. In a weird way, this is sort of symbolic of larger American attitudes about consumerism.
Yeah, Americans basically treat home buying kind of like the stock market. They buy it, then they sell it, and then they buy it again. So as we mentioned, the homeownership rate in Germany is significantly lower than the United States.
Getting down to the reason for why this difference exists, well, that wasn't really quite that straightforward. Each country has its own culture, its own demographics, social policies, politics, and housing finance systems, as well as a robust historical precedence that either favors or disincentivizes home ownership.
According to one source, there is likely a link between mortgage finance, pensions, equity participation, and home ownership.
While not definitive, countries like France, Germany, and the Netherlands have both lower than average homeownership rates and robust public pensions and private defined contribution systems. In essence, what this author was arguing was that countries that have a robust social safety net, along with also robust social housing systems with broad eligibility requirements, typically have lower home ownership rates.
And we didn't really feel like this told the whole story.
Yeah, so we kept digging. And what we found was that government tax policies and regulations also appear to play a significant role in the below than average home ownership rates. For example, Germany, by comparison, has pretty high real estate transfer tax fees. In addition, there's also no mortgage interest rate deduction on your taxes for owner-occupied housing.
Yeah, but if you own a house and you rent that house out, that interest is then tax deductible. But we're in this video only talking about owner-occupied homes.
As many of you know, the real estate transfer tax rates are determined by the German states. They vary between 3.5% and 6.5% of the purchase price of the property, depending on the German state in which the real estate property is located.
Yeah, when we bought our house and we had the bill come, we had to pay 5% real estate transfer tax. That was painful. That was by far the largest bank transfer that we've ever made. a little sick feeling.
But in the United States, yes, you are going to have real estate transfer tax, but it's going to be much, much lower. Again, this is going to vary depending on which state you live in, and in some cases, even the county and the city in which your property is located. For example, on average, it's just 0.33% in the United States. You read that right, 0.33%.
And interestingly, another source actually said, plus many people have even told me this, that people will rent from a landlord as well as owning a house and then renting that house out to another individual. So for us as Americans, this is just a wildly fascinating topic because in the United States, I couldn't imagine owning a house, renting it out to another family where I am also renting my own house that I am living in.
Yeah, so this was actually something that we were really curious about, and we wanted to hear from you guys in the comments section. Is this something that you're familiar with? Do you have any personal experience that you can share? Because we'd really love to hear about it.
And we often hear people will move into the houses they own once they retire. Is that true?
Yeah, let us know down below in the comments.
But in addition to this, there's also been a predominating sentiment that when Germans buy a house, they buy the house for life. And this is actually something we first heard in the comments of our video after we bought a house, which kind of spooked us, thinking maybe we missed something here.
Yeah, when we first announced that we were actually buying a house in Germany, we had a few of you comment, "Oh, so you're living here for the rest of your life then?"
Maybe?
I don't know.
Interesting question.
Forever. 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 Forever.
But quite frankly, we also did find some news articles that hinted about this, that if Germans buy, they buy for life. But we weren't able to really find some hard data on this theme, so this is probably one of those other areas that, again, we would really like to hear your thoughts in the comment section of this video. If you bought a house, did you buy it for life? And if you're renting, would you buy a house for life?
So what is the final verdict here? Is it better to rent in Germany? Is it better to buy in Germany?
Well, according to a study by the Institut der Deutschen Wirtschaft in Köln, in 98% of all of the districts and cities in Germany, owner-occupied housing is going to be cheaper than renting. And they attributed this finding to a couple of factors. They found that the persistently low level of interest rates and competitive rental market growth really ultimately made owner-occupied housing cheaper in the long run. In addition, they also found that although the purchase prices for residential property have risen, they have not fallen as much as interest rates have. As a result, the total financing volume for purchases has decreased over time. And in some cases, this has been significant.
No matter where you live in Germany or the United States, if you've been paying any attention to the real estate market, then you would see that prices are steadily on the rise.
Yeah, actually, at the start of this year, the German Federal Statistical Office announced that in the third quarter of 2021, house prices rose by an average of 12% compared to the same quarter last year.
And if that statistic doesn't scare you, this one probably will. According to Engel and Volkers, overall, property prices have risen between commercial and residential areas by 56.7% between the years 2015 and 2020. And really, the outlook of the United States was just as shocking.
Yeah.
The economist at the National Realtor Association said that the home prices increased in 2021 by 19.1% compared to 2020. 19.1% in 1 year.
And interestingly, in that same analysis, they gave us a really fascinating example of a city called Coeur d'Alene in Idaho.
I'm sorry, anybody who's watching this video that speaks French.
Oh, yeah.
This is actually kind of story time because there's another city in Missouri where we went to college called Versailles.
Which should be called Versailles.
I'm not even saying that perfectly, I know that, but in Missouri it's called Versailles.
America doesn't exactly have the best track record for pronouncing foreign names, so on behalf of the American people, I apologize.
Je
Ma
Pelle.
Pelle.
Great. Okay, faster. Je
Ma
Pelle.
Pelle.
Je m'appelle.
Me poupou.
So 5 years ago, in Coeur d'Alene, 75% of households could afford to buy a medium-priced home based on their income. But like many cities, they have seen an influx of home buyers, people wanting second homes or buying a house and then remote working. All of that on top of just people who live there or are moving there for a local job. So in 5 years, the median home price in Coeur d'Alene more than doubled to about $500,000. And so now only 25% of the people who live there can actually afford to buy a home.
So to explore this theme a little further, we wanted to look at some of the regional housing trends, and we'll start this off by looking at Germany.
So again, according to Engel and Volkers, in 2021, the purchase price for detached or semi-detached houses continued to rise, rather unsurprisingly. The undisputed leader in this segment is Starnberg, with an average house price of 2.08 million euros. In second place is the Bavarian capital of München, or Munich, which has an average asking price of 1.51 million euros for a detached and semi-detached house. Third place goes to Bad Homburg. Here, a single or two family house is offered for an average of 1.49 million euros. And fourth place goes to our neighbor to the north of Heidelberg, where the average offer price is 1.16 million euros.
All right, so what's behind all of this? For starters, many of the most expensive regions to build are also experiencing an increase in population, continuing to make the housing market competitive.
As you can see from this map, based on the areas in red, these are the areas that are seeing a population boom in recent years. Whereas the areas in blue, well, people tend to leave those areas.
But that's not all. There's also a significant construction backlog.
In fact, according to the German Federal Office for Building and Regional Planning, in the last 10 years, the number of building permits increased more than the number of completed homes. In 2019, authorities approved about 360,000 homes. But by the end of the year, there were 740,000 homes approved, but not yet completed. There are various causes for the increase in the construction backlog. The development of projects is often taking longer because the construction processes have become more complex. The construction industry has also been working at a high capacity for years, and again suffers from a shortage of both skilled and unskilled workers.
Okay, so we need to keep this video somewhat controlled. We can't cover all of the contributing factors, but we hope this illuminates for some of the significant reasons why housing prices are on the rise and where geographically this is taking place.
However, I do feel that we would be at least a little bit remiss if we didn't at least briefly address the significant cost of land and how that ultimately contributes to significantly higher housing prices in Germany. As you can see from this map, those prices are in the tens or hundreds of thousands of euros.
And you see that little sliver of deep dark red down there in the southwest? Yes, naturally, this is where we chose to build our house.
And given the maps that we showed you earlier, it maybe isn't so surprising that the areas in which land costs are really, really high also happens to be the same areas that people are migrating to.
But let's put that into real numbers. In 2021, 1 square meter of building land in Germany costs an average of 199 euros, according to the Federal Statistical Office. This is the highest value it has ever been. So
I think we should just be blunt about it. Compared to Germany, on average, US housing prices are just lower.
So currently, the median price per square meter in the United States is around 1,745 euros. By contrast, the average price per square meter for a home in Germany is 5,907 euros on average.
But of course, depending on where you buy your house, the cost of housing could be significantly higher or lower than the number. It's just an average, after all.
According to the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis, the median home price in the United States is $374,900 as of the second quarter of 2021.
And in case you're wondering, yes, that is in fact an all-time high. But to be fair, this data doesn't really give us the full picture of housing prices in the United States.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's no state level data available for this, so it's only going to be looking at homes sold prices. So it's not the only way to capture home value.
So that's why for this analysis, at least, we've also included Zillow's information on home prices. The Zillow Home Value Index puts the typical home price in the United States at $293,349. Again, the Zillow Home Value Index isn't an average. It represents the typical home value in a given area. So to have a little bit of fun here, we thought it would be cool that in order to really understand just the incredible variability of home prices across the United States, we're gonna play a little game. This one will be titled, Guess That American State. Okay, Jonathan. Question number 1.
What do you got?
In which state in the US is it the most difficult to afford a home?
So the most difficult to afford means the median house price needs to be much higher than the median income. The gap, basically, right?
Okay.
So I know California, especially San Francisco, is one of the most difficult for the average person in the country to buy because the housing costs are so high. But I also know New York City is extremely expensive, but New York City is literally just like tiny, dense mass in this massive state. And San Francisco and the entire West Coast, I would say California.
So your final answer?
It's California.
Wrong.
What are you talking about?
Hawaii,
Oh, that state.
interestingly enough, is the most difficult state to buy a home based on Zillow's data. With an average home value of $730,511, the average mortgage payment is 57.9% of the average median income in that state.
I feel like that housing cost is way less than the average housing cost of Freiburg.
Maybe, but I mean, when you just consider spending almost 60% of your income on your mortgage alone,
Yeah, but you live
That's
in Hawaii. I mean, that's pretty nice.
it's still incredible. At that point, I could
It's
just live on a
stressful.
tent
Oh,
on the
yeah.
beach
Yeah, no
for
kidding.
all I'm at,
Yeah.
for all I care. That
Yeah.
would be
or
fine by
a
me.
van on the beach.
Okay, question number 2.
What do you got?
Which state in the US has the cheapest home prices?
So this is a different question because it is not related to income. It is strictly
Which has the
House-
cheapest house prices?
costs on average. You know, we went to school in Missouri, in one of the most desirable counties in Missouri, and the housing costs there were dirt cheap compared to here and any other place we've looked in the United States. We
Sure.
haven't looked everywhere, obviously, but I bet that's it.
You really think Missouri is
Missouri.
the lowest in the US?
I think so, yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
No. Wrong again. This is not your game today, sir.
This is not the naturalization test.
I feel like this whole test is rigged and you looked and cheated.
What is it?
So West Virginia has the cheapest home prices according to Zillow at 40% of the typical US price. However, mortgage payments there take up only 16.1% of the state's median income on average, which, by the way, is the lowest in the nation.
Now, we always try to keep a very close eye on the comments and we stay as active as we possibly can. And this video about cost was definitely the leader, but the very close runner-up was HVAC and energy cost specifically.
Many of you pointed out that there are pretty significant differences between the United States and Germany in this regard. For example, in the US, we have forced air, and in Germany, it's with radiators or underfloor heating, predominantly. I don't want to get ahead of myself here. But as I'm sure many of you have also noticed with the recent energy crisis, there's been a pretty significant increase in the bill that we received for our energy use in the last quarter alone.
That was a surprise.
But to be quite frank, this is a pretty complex topic.
Why do Americans air condition everything to the point that you have to wear a winter coat in the summertime?
And to that same point, why don't Germans use forced air heating and cooling?
And which systems are more efficient?
And I think it's really relevant right now. Compared to the US and Germany, who pays the cheapest energy costs? So as always, guys, please keep those suggestions coming. All right, guys, so that wraps up today's video. If you enjoyed today's content, we would love it if you hit that thumbs up button.
And if you want to see more from the Black Forest family, hit that subscribe button.
So, until next time.
Bis bald.
Tschüss! The topic. Technically, borrows can borrowers. Technically, borrows. Oh God, why am I struggling with that word?
Nailed it.
Okay, that was really bizarre how I said that.
Yeah, that was
Let me
really
say
strange.
it. Let's just do it again. Homeownership.
Oh God, I almost got it all?
Yeah.
Wow. I'm very extra when I talk. I'm a very extroverted person.
That's right, honey.
I'm very extroverted. Just hold your hands steady. God. You're like Georgia, you just can't. So to explore the same alone. Wow, you make this sure fun, don't you?
I sure do.
Batlog.
Batlog?
Batlog, this is Batman.
Like instead of Batman, it's Batlog.
It's the Batlog. Yeah, it's what all of his adventures are.
Doesn't sound like a very aerodynamic Batmobile, but we'll move forward.
Okay.
You were. What is wrong with you?
Just edit it out, it'll be perfect.